Welcome back to the Act 2 podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I am Josh Hallman. Tasha is not here. I'm looking at two people right now, and it's just strange. As I was doing that, we brought in two very big guests, Hall of Famers of the Act 2 podcast. Would you guys like to introduce yourself? Maybe Joe start first?
Oh, I get to go first. My name is Joe Russo. This is my third appearance on the show. I'm still waiting for my three-timer jacket.
It's coming.
That comes at the end of the episode. Yeah. It's a ceremony.
And there's our other guest, who's been on more than me, I think.
Yep. This is Dave Levinson, friend of the pod. I don't know how many times I've been on. I'm guessing, like 5 or 6 probably?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you've been on a lot. And so basically, little backstory here. Tasha is on a vacation. She left. Apparently, she needed some time away. Maybe she had a lot going on. I don't know. So she's not here anymore.
It's like she made a TV show recently or something.
Yeah. So she's taking a nice little vacation and just enjoying her life. And we were talking, Dave and I were talking, and it was like, it's always around Halloween time when the season begins is when Dave comes on the podcast. And so it was Levinson time. And we
That's
were
when
like,
the coffin door swings open and I rise up out, ready to podcast.
Come on. And we were bringing you on, and it was like, all right, we're going to do this podcast without Tasha. And then we knew we needed there was a missing
You needed a third
piece.
chair.
We needed a third chair.
Yeah, we needed the third chair.
And
So
you know how this came about? Joe and I were at dinner before a screening last week, and Joe actually asked me if I was coming on the podcast again for Halloween this year. And I was like, funny you should ask. Not only am I coming on the podcast,
fantastic.
I have found myself guest hosting.
Yeah.
And then, we combined our minds and thought this would be a great idea.
I really, really hope that when Tasha listens to this, she is happy with what we do here. Because I know, Josh, is this the first time you've gotten the keys to the kingdom?
I'd like to think I always have them.
You have a copy of the keys.
I have a copy of the keys. I had to dust it off, but yeah, Tasha usually opens the door, and I play around in the kingdom. You know, I had this thought like right before we jumped on, was that there's that story about Richard Donner. When he finished the Goonies, he went to Hawaii because he had to escape the children, and the children were like driving him like freaking nuts. And then Spielberg surprised him with all the kids from the Goonies, and he was just like, oh my God. And I had this thought, like, if I could have done that to Tasha in some way, shape, or form, I probably would have. If I
like
could
you just show up with your recording equipment to record the podcast?
If I could have, or if I would have like sent her there with like an animation team or something like that, I think I would have fully. Anyway, all right. Today, big topic, but as you guys know, we sometimes start with a This Week in Writing, which we're not going to do because Dave had sent me a Variety article, and it was listing the top 100 horror films of all time, which is just in line with what this episode's all about.
And somehow both Dave and I are not on that list. I don't know how that happened, Dave.
It doesn't make sense.
Must have been a mistake on Variety's part.
Yeah, get them on the line, please.
Yeah, let's write them right after this episode. I'm gonna go over all 100. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go over the top 10. I thought we could just dive into the top 10 of these, and I want to get everyone's thoughts, feelings. I want to know if you've seen the top 10.
Oh.
And, just do a little critical analysis of this list. And
there's a movie in the top 10 that I've never heard of.
Same.
Wow.
There's possibly...
It made me feel guilty and bad about myself, but
are you gonna rectify it, though? That's the real question.
Yeah. When you gotta watch
I'd love
it.
to try to. Yeah.
All right, here we go. Number 10, Carrie.
That's the one that Dave has never seen.
Yeah. Although I have not seen that since I was a kid. I feel like when I first got into Stephen King, I think I was in like 5th grade when I first read The Shining, which got me, and then I read nothing but Stephen King for the next 20 years. But so I feel like it was around that age when I saw Carrie, and I don't think that I've rewatched it since, which I really need to rectify because I know that is a stone cold classic.
Have you seen the remake of Carrie?
Yes.
There have been a couple, I think, right?
Yeah.
I did.
Joe.
Yeah.
Settle down, Joe. Okay. Number 9. I
Number
think
9.
this is the one Dave has not seen, I'm going to guess. Salo or the 100 Days of Sodom?
Yeah, this is also a movie
that is
that is a
correct.
blind spot for me too.
I
Have
don't
you
know.
heard of it, Joe?
I have heard of it, yes.
Okay, I had never heard of it.
But I've not seen it. I've heard
They make it sound like it's kind of hard to find.
Yes,
in
it is.
in the little blurb in the Variety article.
It almost makes it so much better. Okay.
I'm
Number
not
8.
going to lie. There are several titles that I would probably swap out for that one. But hey, everyone can make their own list. That's the fun part about lists.
You hold that thought because
Sure.
I'm going to ask you at the end of this what you're going to swap out.
Oh,
Just
all
a
right.
little spoiler alert.
Okay.
Number 8, Frankenstein. Has anyone seen the 1931 Frankenstein?
Of course.
Yeah, same.
Also, when I was a kid, I think.
I actually wrote a paper on Frankenstein the novel and all of the movie adaptations in college.
Oh, damn.
Comparing them. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're kind of an expert.
I love Frankenstein. Basically, the whole thesis of the paper, though, was why Young Frankenstein was the best adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh my God. Maybe next year we'll have you on talking about that for the Halloween episode. Dave, you're out.
That sounds. I'll bow out on that one.
What would be
rightfully
really
so.
funny if I could actually dig up that paper. I think it's on a dead Dell laptop somewhere in a trash bin. But anyway.
Number
What's funny,
7.
but when I think
not number
about
7.
sorry, Josh, just when I think about Frankenstein, sometimes I wonder how many scenes that I'm thinking of in my head are actually from Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the original Frankenstein is probably, I think, the weakest of them. I mean, I'm surprised Bride of Frankenstein is not higher than Frankenstein on this list. And then also my personal favorite, Son of Frankenstein, which actually shares the most in common with Young Frankenstein. Anyway, I could go on forever.
Yeah.
Joe's about to start a side podcast.
Okay. Number 7, Audition.
Ooh, this
this is another blind spot for me. I've never seen Audition. I know of it. I'm very aware of it, and I know that it's a blind spot, but I have not seen Audition.
Josh, have you seen it?
No,
It's
definitely.
it is a tough watch, man. There is the scene that is depicted in the image in this article is a tough watch. I will never forget seeing Audition.
Really?
I feel like that's basically what I've heard about it, and I don't know if that has stopped me from seeing it and why it remains a blind spot, but yeah, it sounds like a challenge.
Can I just read you guys what the first few sentences of what Variety wrote about it?
Yes, please.
It's no secret that a great many horror films are rooted in the depiction of male rage against women. You don't see that reversed too often, but it would be no exaggeration to say that Takashi Miike's ultra-violent thriller is the Citizen Kane of visionary sadistic feminist revenge fantasies.
Excellent reading, aside from the butchering of Miike-san's last name.
I'm gonna AI that out. Is that accurate?
Don't tell Tasha. Don't tell Tasha.
I was reading it in real time. What is that accurate? It's the Citizen Kane of female revenge.
I mean, it's not that. I mean, there is a gloriously long torture scene at the end of the movie of where horrible things are done to the male character in the movie. So it sticks with you. Literally, things get stuck into him and it sticks with you. So,
Jesus. Okay. Number 6, Night of the Living Dead from 1968.
It's classic.
Classic.
Yeah.
Can't
argue with that one.
15 years ago today, I saw the movie on the big screen at the International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival, and my wife and I got to meet Barbara. They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Really?
Yeah. I actually
That
popped
sounds
up on
like
my
a cool experience.
Yeah, popped up on my Facebook memories this morning.
That's how you knew. I was going to ask.
How the hell did I remember that?
Why do you remember that?
Well, I have this journal, Josh, where I just keep track of these
things I did in October.
Yeah.
Okay. I know number 5 is one of Dave's all-time favorite movies.
I
just
do
from
too.
knowing Dave. Rosemary's Baby.
Small anecdote. I actually met Dave Levinson when I was a development exec because I read his spec screenplay that was inspired by Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, that was the Josh. Can you
I was
can you tell us the title of that screenplay? Friend Test.
I know exactly what it is.
Was this something that went through writers group?
Can you wait? What is it?
Oh my God! This is
oh my God! The Hill. What's funny about The Hill is I could probably tell you character names of The Hill. I could tell you I remember The Hill very well. Dude, where is The Hill, by the way? Kicking around?
Kicking around. It's kicking around. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that I had it number 2 maybe on last year's episode when we did our top 5 favorite horror movies.
Oh, that's right.
I think I had it at number 2.
Okay. All right. Well, number 4, Jaws.
I mean,
can't argue with that.
The big debate about this is Jaws a horror movie?
Right.
That's always the conversation that comes up with Jaws. I think it is. I'm a staunch defender that Jaws is a horror movie, and the fact that it's on this list was very good validation. I sent it to several people to rub it in their faces.
So Joe, I know that you make that argument all the time, and so when I saw Jaws at number 4 on this list, you were the very first thing that I thought of, and I was like, redemption.
I love that one of my
for Joe.
I love that one of my Twitter bits makes people think of me when they see stuff like this. That's very funny to me.
Can I ask why is it a horror film, and why wouldn't it be a horror film?
Well, so I think why it is it's a monster movie, right?
Yeah.
And literally Jaws is stalking them almost like a slasher.
Right.
You know, there's a cold open where the naked girl gets killed by the monster, right? You're hooked in. There's jump scares with heads popping out of boats. All the tropes are there. But I think because the third act has such kind of an adventurous spirit to it, people want to take it away from horror and bring it over to like adventure and thriller. But it, at its heart, at its roots, I mean, the reason it's so scary, the reason it terrified people out of the water is it's a horror movie.
Preach.
No, I agree. Actually, I was just playing devil's advocate ways. All right. Number 3, a classic, Psycho.
I mean, what can you say about Psycho that hasn't been said?
What can you say about Psycho?
One of the best.
Number 2, I think another one of Levinson's favorites, The Exorcist.
One of my
Am I
favorites.
wrong about that?
It was not in my top 5, if that's what you
are
referring to. But it's a fantastic movie. I do love The Exorcist.
It certainly should be on a horror Mount Rushmore, whether it's your favorite or not.
Yeah.
Okay, number 1, the movie that scared me probably the most when I was younger, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974.
I just saw
it. It's almost more of an experience than a movie.
It is an experience. I agree with that. I saw it for the first time on the big screen at the Egyptian a couple weeks ago for the 50th anniversary. And it is powerful in a cinema. More powerful than I think I've ever really experienced watching it at home. I don't know if I ever truly got it until I saw it on the big screen. Like, I've always appreciated it and I've always respected it, but this is the first time that it actually impacted me in a really visceral way.
Oh my God.
I've seen it at the cemetery, at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery screenings. I saw it there a few years ago, which was definitely very fun and like a cool experience, and technically seeing it on the big screen. But I bet it's even different in a theater where it's a little bit more, claustrophobic. That I would love to see it that way.
I think I talked about this on the last year's Halloween episode that we did, but when I was younger, we rented this from Blockbuster, and I was, I don't know, not 10, 11, 12, whatever it was. And I remember being terrified watching this. And then my buddy and we read the back of it, and it said it was inspired by the murders of Ed Gein in Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. And we had to shut it off because I was like, holy shit. Because when you're a kid, you're like, he's here. There's killers in Wisconsin and they're coming to get us. And I just remember being thinking it was like a documentary. It would just scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I could definitely see something like that. I mean, for me, I think the problem was I came to it too late. I came to it after seeing Scream and Halloween and Freddy.
Same.
And so for me, it always and even the Friday the 13th, it was probably the last of the slasher icons I got to. And I think because all those movies owe so much to it, it felt a little pillaged by the time I had seen it.
On this list of 10, is there anything you would swap in, swap out? I know there's a bunch of honorable mention, but like out of that, how are we feeling?
I think for me, from a list standpoint, I feel like this is actually a really good list. I think, but for me, I would probably swap out Solo and Audition. No offense to Solo, since none of us have seen it, but also Audition. I just think, how do you not have Scream and Halloween on this list? It feels like a crime
Joe,
to me.
Those were the two that I was going to say. Why we're friends.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, those two movies I think are iconic, are inherently rewatchable, and redefined their respective genre. In both instances, to me, it feels like a crime that they are not in the top 10 along some of these other kind of mountains of the genre,
including Welcome Home and The Inheritance.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just have to age a little bit more, you know.
Exactly. Give it time. Give it time. We'll be cracking the top 90 in another 10 years.
Yeah. You're gonna bump out Frankenstein.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving in. Big topic. By the way, I just realized we're basically 20 minutes in. I didn't even give like a good introduction for either of you guys. I just assumed everyone at this point knows who you are. So
I feel like if not, they can go back through the old.
They can
episodes.
go listen to our respective episodes.
Yeah. All right. Where to begin on the main topic? The main topic that we're talking about are rules and mystery in horror films. And Dave, you're gonna have to maybe help me here. Like, we started to talk about The Ring. I don't know how we started to talk about it or why we started talking about it. Maybe it was because we were talking about what we wanted to do an episode on, but somehow The Ring turned into how great the rules are used in The Ring and the mystery that unfolds throughout The Ring. And so we decided to talk about the rules and mysteries in general in horror films, but also kind of using The Ring as the touch point for what we're going to be talking about, because I think, and Joe, I'd love to know your opinion on The Ring, but it's almost like a perfect rules and mystery horror film.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I think we landed on The Ring because we were texting back and forth trying to come up with a topic, and we were considering doing just like an old school breakdown of a movie, and we were talking about what movie.
Oh, that's right.
And I think I pitched The Ring because The Ring is one of my most rewatched movies, because any time that I have an idea that is a horror movie that acts as a mystery, I watched The Ring for research purposes, because I just think that it's an impeccably structured mystery.
I also think it's a perfect movie. I still say to this day, I have never been more terrified watching a movie in a movie theater than when I saw The Ring. I found it to be one of the most intense experiences I've ever had in a theater. I remember, funny little aside, for your younger listeners, when you put too many buttons in your TV, it used to create that snow effect. That Samara, would hail her coming. And so my buddy, who I saw The Ring with that night, he liked to watch TV before he falls asleep. And so that night he had rolled over on his remote.
Oh my God.
And at some point in the night woke up to the snow on his television set.
Oh God. Just worst case scenario across the board.
Yes. I found it to be, I think it's a very amusing anecdote. I also, my ex-girlfriend, and maybe this is one of the reasons why, was terrified of this movie. And so whenever she would leave a room, there was a long time where I would change the TV to snow, get really close to the TV, wait for her to come back in, have her pull me away from it and make the face, the face, the dead face. So yes, I love The Ring, man. It's one of the best. I think Dave's right. Like it's such a textbook example of great structure, of mystery unraveling throughout a movie, and rules that unfortunately I feel like, and I'm sure maybe Dave you can speak to this too, a lot of times I feel like I'm just operating in its shadow. There's that's kind of one of the hard parts, is when you're trying to figure out a curse and you're trying to figure out how it functions and what it does, and I feel like inevitably the conversation is going to drift back to The Ring. And I think that's why
I think that applies. I mean, you are operating in its shadow, but that doesn't mean that you can't create sort of your own awesome version of it. And you can, because I feel like there are other great movies that are operating in The Ring's shadow. Like I love It Follows. I love Smile. But it's like any of these movies where a curse is being passed from person to person, and you have a certain amount of time. You always just drift back to The Ring. Like at least I do.
The time thing's especially tough because and I feel like Parker. I love Smile too. I love Smile and Smile too. I've seen both movies now. But I think Parker. That was one of the things that the Smile curse is kind of funny. There's like that moment in the first movie where they're like, "Oh, how long does it take to, impact you?" And they're like, 4 to 6 days." Like they're doing everything they can to not say 7 days. And then the sequel, they're like, about a week.
Oh, really? So there's no
give or take. Yeah.
There's no defined time.
No. What they ended up, they kind of fleshed out a little bit more in the sequel, and this isn't really a spoiler, but it basically says like, when the parasite's done feeding on you, that's when it will force you to kill yourself in front of someone else, right? You pass the curse on. So it's like the parasite, it's a trauma monster that feeds on your darkness. And when it's done feeding, it moves on. And Jesus. They say that takes about 4 to 6 days.
Right. I actually just watched Smile 1 yesterday afternoon, and I'm pretty sure they say that like no one who saw the initial trauma has survived longer than 4 days. I think it was.
Something like that. 4 to 6 days, except for the one guy who can reveal all the information. Another staple of these movies. But go ahead.
To Smile 2, and no spoilers, but does it push the mythology forward?
It does. In small ways.
Okay.
I think what I saw someone online make this comparison. I think it's kind of funny. They said Smile to Smile 2 is kind of like Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2, where like they're doing a lot of the same beats, but they're doing them in like bigger, creative, and different ways. So I think Parker kind of took the recipe for success from the first movie, and I think he really perfected it with this one.
So The Ring, it's awesome. There's rules. You guys covered them. There's mystery. So I'm kind of jumping around, but this is what Dave and I were kind of talking about yesterday was over text, was like, there's like in that movie, there's layers of mystery. There's her trying to figure out the origin of the tape, and there's trying to figure out her like how to stop it. And it's so brilliant. And I feel like it maybe we'll touch on that, but it's just so perfect how that's done.
One of the things the movie does that's really smart is the cold open, I think, is like one of the strongest cold opens in a horror movie, probably since Scream. It's basically, it's two young girls in a house alone at night, and they pitch it as an urban legend, like, hey, have you heard about this videotape that kills you when you die? Right? And they lay out the rules so simply and succinctly, and then the whole scene pivots when, one of the girls is like, I actually saw it, right? Mm-hmm. It's a great, like, you could cut that out and it would just be like a wonderful short film on its own. and it really just everything you need to know for the rest of the movie is kind of just so brilliantly and cleanly laid out. I'm almost in awe of it every time I see it.
The thing that I love the most about how the mystery unfolds is how visual it is, because a lot of time, and I rewatched the movie last night, and there is a good amount of like close-ups of like newspaper articles that she's reading, which is a little bit less, visually interesting. And I feel like a lot of movies lean on that, but what The Ring also has is like you have this VHS tape with all these horrific images that have no context. And so Naomi Watts, as she's trying to uncover the origins of this videotape, is basically just going like image to image, like what is this image, investigates it, and then that leads to the next one, and then it's like, how do all of these weird, creepy images come together and create this grander puzzle that then, of course, leads her to Samara and her family. But it's just like, it's so brilliantly visually driven.
Yeah. The tape is like the movie itself. The journey the characters go on. It's like member berries for the tape, because you see all these little. You see how all the little bits from the tape come to life. It's really just great. Setup and payoff. Like that tape has so much going for it, and it never ceases to be exciting when they see the real world version of the things from the tape, I think.
Yeah. That's always,
I
that's
actually
always smart
kind of forgot. I forgot last night until I watched it last night that like part of I guess this falls under a rule, is that like you see each image in your life before you die. So like each image from the tape you see in the world in those 7 days before you die, which I had forgotten that part, but that's also really
is that what it is? I couldn't remember. I thought it was just more because they went on the journey and they found those places from the tape. Like they found the horses, they found Samara's room and stuff.
They see the ladder. Like I was confused. She saw the ladder.
Yeah.
I was like, why is she seeing the ladder?
She sees the ladder like in the world.
But not everyone. Like if I just like sitting at home for 7 days, I'm not going to see a ladder, right?
Maybe there's work being done outside your window, Joe.
That's true.
You never know. All right. Well, can we discuss, I guess, just on the granular level, like what rules are in horror films? This is very obvious, but just to be clear about it, the rules are like they get laid out. Like you were just kind of talking about Smile, kind of has rules, but it still sounds like it obviously works. But like in The Ring, the rules are you watch this tape, you die in 7 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess let's just discuss the benefit of having having rules, and if there's any negatives to having rules. Like, does it constrict you as a screenwriter, or even as like I'll just say this for myself. Like, for me, it would almost create structure. If I'm writing a horror film, I'm like, oh my God, these are the rules. This is freaking perfect. Because you're in your playground and you don't get too crazy. But also that might be constricting. I don't know. I don't know if you guys feel like you need to have rules in horror films.
I think it's important because it works as a framework and sort of gives an air of, I guess, reality to something that is probably quite, supernatural and not real. It's like without rules, anything can happen, and then that can just kind of get messy, and you can poke holes in whatever. So I think that it's important to have like as a sort of foundation and framework, but it can also be kind of a frustrating house of cards because like you come up with these cool rules, and then you might a couple days later come up with like, oh, a really cool set piece or idea to throw in the script, but then it's like, fuck, that just like undoes this many levels of the rules that I just created, and you have to like, do you pigeonhole it in? I'm going through this right now. This is like a really well timed episode because I'm early on in the process.
Me too, Dave.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm trying to break this idea, and I'm basically in the weeds coming up with the rules right now. So
yeah,
it's frustrating.
I think it's frustrating when it bumps up with what you need from your characters and your story emotionally. I think
Okay.
that's usually where the rubber hits the road, and then you're like, fuck, but I have these rules and I can't bend them to make the story fit my will, right? But I think what rules do provide is you basically make a deal with the audience, right? You say, this is the game we're playing, right? And so to me, that allows the viewer to go through the movie with the characters, knowing what can happen, and what might happen, and ultimately what will happen. And then there's also the fun of you establish the rules, and if you do it right, maybe you can even pull the rug out from the rules at the end and surprise the viewer even more. So there's a sense of satisfaction, I think, in the storytelling that comes when the rules kind of hit in the way you want them to. I think that's why, even though Smile has a downer ending, spoiler, it's satisfying because basically Parker took this character through this curse where she saw someone kill themselves. The curse passed on to her. She was terrified by this demon for 4 to 6 days. And ultimately it subsumes her in the way that at the beginning of the movie, Parker laid out the rules. And so it's satisfying, even though our main character gets got at the end. And I think The Ring does the kind of the opposite, right? Because we see our character beat the curse, but she doesn't beat it in the way that she thought she did. And the curse is still ongoing. So and that is dark in its own way, but satisfying because we thought the character outsmarted the curse, but the curse outsmarted us and the character. So there's a lot of fun things that I think, a lot of benefits that come from laying out these rules with the audience in terms of just storytelling. Even something like The Sixth Sense, which isn't necessarily a curse movie, but it obviously has a function of a twist ending. Yeah. There are rules. If you go back and you watch that movie again, you never see Bruce Willis interact with anyone else other than Cole. So we watch the movie completely buying into the idea that, oh, he's a therapist, a child therapist, and he's just working with this young boy. And it completely washes over us the fact that, spoiler, he's dead.
Damn. Damn, Joe.
But I know I ruined The Sixth Sense. Sorry, guys. 25-year-old movie. But the point being, when you go back and you look at it again, you realize Shyamalan was playing by a very specific set of rules, and that's why the twist works and still holds up to this day.
It's like startlingly obvious when you go back and rewatch that movie that Bruce Willis never interacts with another human being.
Yeah,
it's so weird. I was actually thinking about that with The Sixth Sense because I watched it just recently, and it's like because of the pacing of his films, it almost works that Bruce Willis is sitting in a room not talking to Toni Collette, because it's just kind of this slow, weird thing that's happening, and you're like, all right, well, the pace of the film's been this consistent thing the entire time. It's Sixth Sense is freaking brilliant how he managed to do that. And then, real quick, so you guys both said you're working on something with rules currently.
Yes.
And so will you change rules if you feel like a character needs to accomplish something, right? Like, is it a chicken and egg type thing, or like what comes first, like the rules or the character, or are they working at the same time and evolving?
For me, I think I'm willing to, keep working on the rules until the character's needs from like a thematic standpoint are met. Because I think that ultimately that's the heart of the movie. That's the emotion of it is what people hopefully are going to remember. And so for me, it's like the character story has to come first. And so the rules have to sort of service that in the best way that they can. Joe, do you feel the same, or how do you approach it?
I feel the same. I think this is one of the, I have a project that Dave read the first draft of last fall. And as we've been working with our producer, who is a powerhouse in the horror genre. Getting notes from him and from his executives, we have had to change and adjust what the rules can be and how they can work. And I think the reason sometimes it can be frustrating, the rules, when you're working and trying to refine them, is because you do have to continue to try and find a marriage between the rules and the characters and the theme. And it's like it's a push-pull thing. And eventually you hit that right equilibrium and that right balance, and you hope for something as clean as the Ring and Smile and It Follows. That's I think those are the goals. But you definitely can see the opposite problem, which is if it gets too convoluted, if it gets too complicated, you can find yourself having to have characters have this expository dialogue or these sequences where they're trying to discover the rules that can feel plotting at times. And so it's really just trying to find the best balance of those things so that the audience feels like, as you're unraveling, I think the other side to this conversation is mystery. As you're unraveling the mystery behind these rules and this curse and this haunting, they feel just as engaged as the characters are.
Damn.
Joe, do you find that like simplicity is important? Like as you're kind of going through the process and trying to, like you said, marry these three things and kind of nail it down. And
I do.
It's just getting more complicated and convoluted. Like, do you ever step back and it's like, okay, let's strip this down a little bit again and bring it? Because I feel like whenever I get an idea that falls into this space, the initial seedling of the idea always feels so like clean and simple, right? And obvious.
Yeah.
And then once you start really getting into the meat of it, it's like it just becomes so unwieldy and complicated. And so it's like, I guess, yeah, my question to you is just, do you ever like step back and it's like, okay, let's strip this back a little bit?
We're all the time, and you know, we're on draft 3 of this project. So in this one in particular, it has been, we have a very big mythology, a very big supernatural mythology we're working with, and we also have several characters who get impacted by this curse over the course of the movie. So sometimes we think we've come up with something clean and cool and interesting, and then we're like, but like the timelines of when the characters get cursed, it fucks the whole thing up, you know, and like we have to go back to the drawing board. I think that is the hard part about living in, that's why I said I feel like I live in the Ring's shadow, because the simplicity of the Ring or It Follows, the lack of like the fact that they are so clean and concise, sometimes you realize, God, the easiest way to do it would just be to do the Ring, but then you're just doing the Ring. And you have to find your own way into the rules and your own mythology. And I think that's really where the rubber hits the road. And that's, it is not easy. But like I said, I think when you figure it out, and the movie is functioning by that logic, I think it's easier to lay the emotional beats over that, I think, than try to conform the emotional beats to the logic of the rules.
It's interesting you bring up the simplicity, and we'll definitely get into the mystery of stuff, but I was thinking of the same thing. I was like, what is a simple rule set? And I don't know if this is necessarily a direct rule set, but I was thinking of Nightmare on Elm Street and the Freddy movies, where it's just so simple of like, oh yeah, you just can't fall asleep. And then like, you're just trying to stay awake, and it's so clean and it makes so much sense. It's just beautiful how clean it is. And
I also, another simple one, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, I love A Nightmare on Elm Street. I also did, for this project that I'm working on, I did my own breakdown, like scene by scene of It Follows. And it's crazy how simple that movie is. It's so effective. I love that movie. I love it so much that I was surprised how simple it is. Like, it's literally just if you have sex with a person who has this curse, then then the curse goes onto you, and you just have the curse until it kills you, or you have sex with someone else.
The mean thing about it follows though is if that the person you pass it on to dies, it comes back.
Then
to
it comes
you.
back to you. That's right.
Yeah, that's that. I always thought that was
right.
I always thought that was like a brilliant addendum to that
Interesting.
kind of sexual chain letter curse thing that they were doing. The boomerang effect I thought was really interesting because you think you've passed it on and you're done, and then it's like, oh fuck, it's coming for me again.
You're dependent on that person to not suck at surviving.
Yeah.
So, not to cut you off, Joe, but I'm pivoting into mystery because I think it's important.
You're the host, baby.
We follow you.
Kingdom. All right.
You're when Tasha's not here, you're the fearless leader.
Yeah. Move over, Tasha. So I was actually, for some reason, I was just thinking what are some like horror films without rules and that just have mystery? And this just came to me. I don't know why I didn't prep with this beforehand, but it was Scream. That there's not really a rule set in Scream, but it's a horror film, and it's just a mystery of like who's killing these people, right? Is there? Basically, my question was going to be just kind of like, and you kind of touched on this, but like the marriage of having like rules and mystery. Is one more important than the other? Like, I feel like you don't need rules in a horror film, but you do need mystery in a horror film. Does that make sense?
It's interesting. I would actually argue that Scream does have rules, right?
I would agree with Joe.
Okay,
sorry, Josh.
All right.
My bad.
So, because like you think about like
Tasha.
Right, because they make the phone calls, they have the voice modulator.
They play a game essentially.
They play movie trivia games with their right. So there are things that happen in the Scream movies that I would say are rule based, right? It's not a curse, you're right in that sense. It's not like oh gosh, I have 7 days to lift this curse from me. What do I do? But there are rules that the killer plays by. Just like Freddy has rules that he plays by, just like I think Jason has rules that he plays by.
Although I will say in regards to Scream that like I think the rules almost don't matter because I mean Ghostface is going to kill you whether you answer the question correctly or not, right? Has Ghostface ever let a victim off because they answered a horror movie question correctly?
That's a really good question. I'd probably have to rewatch the franchise to know.
So I'd like
what happens to Kirby in 4? I mean, she survives, right?
Oh wow!
Doesn't she get the answer right?
A deep cut, Joe.
She gets stabbed though, doesn't she? I think she like manages to. I haven't seen the 4th one in a while, so
yeah, I'd have to go back and rewatch. I just know she's in the 6th one, so she did make it.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, sure. They're at the end of the day,
but it's definitely dressed up with rules for sure. Like it's I think it's heavily dressed up with rules because of everything that Joe was just saying.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Scream feel like Scream are those rules, are those you could almost call them tropes of that specific franchise too. I think almost every good horror movie I can think of though. There's usually unless it's a visceral experience like Texas Chainsaw where it's just like we just got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I think almost all of the good horror movies have some sort of mystery as to why is this house haunted? Where did my daughter go? Who is trying to kill me and why? How do I beat this curse? There's usually that's kind of where the meat and potatoes of a second act live. Is kind of pulling on that thread. I mean, that's. I know we kind of talked about this when we did the Inheritance episode a couple months ago, but I mean, that's essentially we did an Agatha Christie murder mystery set in a haunted house with a supernatural entity being the killer, and really the big hook is who is manipulating the supernatural entity and why, right? And so that's kind of how we laid the track out on that movie. And so as people are getting picked off one by one and the main characters are trying to figure out what's going on, it all kind of builds and boils to this confrontation at the end. And that's the engine, I think, that keeps that movie running.
Yeah, I think my favorite horror films are the ones with mystery. Like I didn't realize it until we were kind of doing this, but the visceral stuff, it's not for me. Like, it's not like what I want to watch. But if I'm watching like The Conjuring, for instance, like that's such an experience, and you're trying to, figure out the mystery or
you're trying to figure out who is the demon and what does it want with his family and how do we stop the demon. I think that is inherently where like I said, the kind of meat and potatoes of the engine of a second act can go. I remember very, very succinctly a project that I was developing a long time ago with a director named William Brent Bell, and he did The Boy and The Devil Inside, and I remember there was someone finds something inside a grandfather clock, and he was like, "Oh, you should try to make it more of a puzzle where like they have to, turn a dial and I don't know, whatever, like and like open a hidden door to get to the thing." And I think about that a lot because I think that again it adds to the level of mystery. Like what is like the fact that you have to go through these extra steps to get the thing makes the thing that they find inside it, that whatever the MacGuffin is, inherently more interesting, and it just kind of furthers that mystery, that engine that's driving the plot.
Mysteries, they're horror films with mystery, and action films, as you were saying, that they're not that far apart. There's like MacGuffins and action films, and people are trying to figure out who's trying to end the world. But like if you just made, Mission Impossible 3 into a horror film, kind of work. Has there been a horror?
I always say, and I think this is why directors like Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson and Steven Spielberg all kind of started with horror and graduated to be some of the best, most coherent action directors we have. James Wan too, is because horror has all of the same things a good action movie has. Like it has suspense, it has thrills, it has set pieces, it has romance, it has humor, like all of the seeds of what make good horror work in a big action movie too. Like I don't think the genres are as far off as I think some people tend to think they are, looking at them objectively. Like, and I just think that they're, and really truly, I think this speaks to something that Mick Garris always said when we were doing my old podcast Postmortem, was good horror is good drama first. And I think a good action movie is good drama first, because what is Die Hard? Die Hard is really just about a man trying to reconnect with his wife in extreme circumstances, right? So to me, you could also boil down a lot of horror movies with that as well.
Yeah, I live by that motto. A horror movie should, if you stripped away all of those genre elements, that movie should still be able to exist as a drama. The good ones, anyway.
No, it is crazy, like how close things actually are. Like Joe, you just put that really well. Things are actually a lot closer. If it's just there's good drama, there's good storytelling, good characters. It's just stripped down. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the window dressing. It's whatever window dressing you choose to go with, whether that's scary or thrilling and exciting.
I think that's also one of the reasons it's so frustrating for people who get lumped into the horror genre as writers and directors, like Dave and I have been, because we know we're capable of doing the other stuff too. But for whatever reason, the town is like, no, you do the gutter stuff.
You stay in the gutter.
Yeah, you stay in the gutter.
It's funny you say that, because I was almost reluctant to say like, oh, you guys are horror writers, because I know that's not the case. I know specifically with Dave, like
it's easier for a sales perspective for agents and managers to be like, you are this one type of writer, because then they know how to brand you to executives who can then put you on lists as that type of writer. It's the ecosystem is designed to put you in those prisons. Just as I'm sure you probably have ambitions beyond just action comedy. Like I think we all know. John Landis said one time in one of the interviews, I think we did on Postmortem, he described directing as like, and I think the same for writing, it's building a chair, right? different chairs can have different styles to them, whatever. But at the end of the day, we all know they need 4 legs. They need a seat. They need a back, right? And we know how to build that thing. And so what the executives and producers don't get is that we all are capable of building a good chair. It's not that we're only good at this one type of thing. We can be good at different things as long as it's a chair.
Joe, out of curiosity, have you ever tried to make or taken out a script that was just a drama or a comedy or something like well outside of the horror genre?
I was just gonna ask that.
So not that has been driven on a speculative basis by my reps. We've mostly focused on horror and thriller stuff. But I've worked on projects with other producers that were more action oriented. Working on something that's a little, kind of lives in the political space right now with a producer. So I'm definitely trying to expand my wings a little bit and try different things. But I think that, you have to try to do that just so you don't get bored. I mean, I do find one of the hard parts about when I write too many horror things in a row is there is a formula to some of it. And yes, you have to try to find a way to beat the formula, but sometimes you get beaten down by the formula. And I do think that sometimes just expanding my wings and trying my hand at something else helps kind of make me refreshed when I come back to a horror thing again.
Sure, yeah, kind of re-spark that creativity.
Exactly.
Okay. I just realized we've been going. I didn't. The time just flew, but I feel like you said some good things, Joe, that would feel like we could wrap up. But I do have like one more thing. This is for both.
Let's do it. What's the one more thing?
I want to know your approaches to writing a horror film. I know that's a broad question, but like the best approach, meaning, do you start with the rules? Do you start with the mystery? I know I kind of brought that up, but like, what's your approach when you get an idea, you see an idea, and how do you kind of like turn it into a horror film?
Dave, do you want to tackle that first?
Well, it's a heavy question. It's a broad question.
I feel like, strangely enough, over the last several years, my sort of bread and butter sweet spot has been more contained thrillers that are a little bit more grounded, where I have to rely a little bit less on rules. So yeah, the project that I'm outlining now is sort of my first foray back into like the supernatural horror space in several years.
Dave specializes in Airbnb thrillers.
Exactly. I have a very niche market. But so I think though, because of that, because I'm so used to, writing these movies that are like 3 or 4 people in a house, I really tackle developing these ideas from a place of character and really defining these characters and who each character is, what they want, the traumas that are, hanging over their head and haunting them, and then kind of creating the situation that can most prey on that vulnerability and bring their weaknesses out to the surface. And so, I mean, I think, that's kind of how I tackle contained thrillers. I think that can probably be used for more cursed supernatural horror, and to a certain extent. I'll let Joe speak on that.
For me, I think we've talked about this before too, and I know that Tasha, who is not here, feels similarly. I think theme is very important. So for me, it's usually, I used to start with concept and work my way into those other things. And as I've gotten older and wiser and a little bit more experience, I hope, I tend to try to figure out what I want to say with a piece before I start building it out. So whether someone's approached me with an idea conceptually, or I've come up with an idea conceptually before I start writing anything, I try to figure out what I want to say with the piece thematically, and who are the characters that I can use to be challenged by that theme. And and then start kind of working my way out from there, building out from there. And inevitably, rules and scares are things I think that come as the net gets wider. But I think you got to know what you want to say with the piece, even before you come up with the rules, because I think the rules could ultimately define how the character's journey starts and ends, and that is inherently related to their arc and their theme.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, on this piece that I'm working on right now that I'm trying to figure out, I agree that theme is incredibly important, and I try to bake that in from the start also. But on this current piece, I don't think that I had a really strong grasp on what my theme was. I just sort of had this cool concept, and I'll figure out the characters, and I'll create the rules. And as I'm trying to break it, I got through the first act, got through the second act, and kind of hit the third act, and all of a sudden it was like a light bulb just went on in my head, and I was like, this movie is about a father and a daughter who have lost themselves, and in their grief coming back, fighting each other again in the darkness. And then that caused just so many light bulbs to go off, and I just went back to act one, and you got to start from there, and that really sort of makes the movie.
Guys, amended it. That was beautiful. Well said. We covered rules. We covered mystery. We talked about the ring.
Love the ring.
All
Happy
right.
Halloween, guys.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Easy, guys. I still have the quote of the day here. Hold on. All right. Quote of the day. The road to hell is paved with works in progress. Philip Roth.
Nice.
Please don't forget to rate and subscribe. You can follow us at Act 2 Writers. I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter. Josh Hallman on Instagram. Dave, I know you. Just what do you think your Instagram handle is?
I don't even know. It is Dave_Levinson 7.
Boom. Joe, social media.
Joe Russo tweets on Twitter and Joe Russo Graham on Instagram.
All right. As always, the Act 2 podcast is a production of the Act 2 Network. This podcast was edited by Paul Lundquist.